Bombity bombity bom. Right, the question I think we can turn round or change to have another view on this. The old question, let's call it, it was rather bold. It's either the fact rocks can't have awareness, or is that right? Or I have awareness and I'm made of rocks. Is that right? That's the old question. The new question is the world, universe, the world, let's call it. Is it made up of lots of little things, or is it one big thing? That seems an innocent sort of question. And a lot of people just think it's what is called semantics, that you could call it, on one view, one big thing, or another view you could call it lots of little things, or clumps of little things. A rock, for instance, would be one thing, which is part of the world. Where we get a bit more nitty-gritty is you and me. Are you different from me? As in, are you apart from me? Are you a different thing to me? And because I've put it that way, the obvious answer is yes. I don't kind of see it that way. But if it was asked that way, I would see it that way. I don't see myself as separate from the world. I don't think I'm a separate thing. I think I'm the wall over there, or the books there. There's me, there's air, then there's books, then there's the wall. It's a kind of a feeling thing, and it's a thinky thing. But to my feeling and thinking, it's all very grey. I don't see me as a completely separate thing to the air, the books and the wall. And I think this is where the great breakdown is, or the demarcation line. Because if you do see yourself as a completely separate entity thing, beside a one level, it does lead to problems. But you can't really, like I've often been on about free will, or gradations again of free will, you can't really think of yourself as a separate thing, separate from the world, without thinking that you've got free will. Otherwise, how is this separate thing going to work in the world without free will? It's got an inner generation of its actions, as it were. It's got its own guidance systems and all this sort of thing. But this is where it gets grey, and it works apart from the world. And I think most people think that way, that they are apart from the world and are operating as an individual lone wolf, lone item in the world. I think this is where the problem comes in, that this, where it's a black and white thing at the moment for most people, that they think they're an individual on their own in the world. Needs is wrong. Should be is wrong. would be better if wrong. There is the other option of thinking, imagining, feeling, being just a part of the world. And I think this question is more pertinent, more personal. And it comes down to, do you see the world as lots of little individual things, or do you see the world as one big thing being lots of little things? It's a kind of who's in charge thing. It's like the free will thing. Most people, even if they say, they scribble all sorts of things, I don't believe in free will's rubbish, it's crap, or a stupid idea, but still operate completely as though the world was full of individual separate bits, and they are an individual separate bit, part, chunk, item in the world. And the world is only just something that's made up of individual bits, be they solid or the air in between them. Call the air one thing, I don't know where, or air in this room's one thing, in that room's a different thing, whatever. But it's just a way of seeing the world. You either see it as individual bits, or you see it as one big whole. And that's your continuum. And you can be over towards seeing it as a whole, or over towards seeing it as little bits. And going through this question, I think this better gets us past the old question, because the old question just goes ka-dunk, and you get nowhere. Because awareness, I'm aware, whatever that is. And over here, the impossibility that little bits of matter have been put into such, or found themselves in such a concatenation that they can be, little bits can be aware, which again is nonsense. But if the whole thing, when we're dealing with anything like a feeling of awareness here, if it's a little individual in the world type thing, it's difficult. But if it's the entire world that is doing a bit of an awareness in a part of itself here, that just seems a lot more possible. Because we don't know, because we're not we are not the whole. We are just such a little part of the whole, and why should a little part of the whole know what the whole is doing? It doesn't have to be doing anything on purpose. We think about doing things on purpose, but what the whole is doing, it's outside our ken. But we could imagine that the whole is doing a little bit of awareness through a little bit of itself here. That seems much more acceptable to our imagination than I, made up of rocks, am doing an individual bit of awareness here, and lots of other little bits are doing their bits of awareness and their bits of things, which to my imagination is hard to imagine. So that's gone off, so it must be 10 minutes. So I think we'll call it quits there. Bye.